There is a cry rising from the hearts of many. Lord, I know there is more. A holy dissatisfaction. A restlessness that cannot be explained. You pray, yet you know there is a deeper dimension of prayer. You study, yet you sense that your spirit has not yet touched the depths. You serve, but something within you whispers, this is not all there is. That voice, that cry, it is not rebellion, it is the sound of destiny calling. You were not created to remain on the same level year after year with no evidence of divine progress. There is such a thing as spiritual growth. There is such a thing as enlargement. There is such a thing as rising in power and wisdom in stature. But growth is not gifted. It is cultivated. It is fought for. It is birthed through prayer. It is sustained by light. And it is preserved by consistency. The danger of remaining small in a season when God is calling you higher is that you become irrelevant in the move of God. Tonight the Spirit of God is sounding an alarm. It is time to grow. It is time to stretch. It is time to ascend. It is time to become. Growth is God's desire for every man, but not all growth is of God. There is a kind of increase that is orchestrated by divine wisdom and birthed in the womb of prayer. Growth is not just about movement. It is about alignment with divine patterns. The first thing you must understand is that growth is God's design, not a personal ambition. You were designed to move from one realm of glory to another, from one dimension of impact to another. But the tragedy is when men begin to think that growth can be achieved outside of divine intelligence. It is not ambition that brings true growth. It is revelation and alignment. The plants in the garden grow because they remain connected to the life system built around them. When you try to grow by comparison or competition, you will run outside of grace and enter into burdens God did not design for you. There are people who have labored, they have studied, they have invested energy, but they have not grown because they violated divine pattern. Real growth begins when you discern the will of God for your life and then submit to the process that births stature. Prayer is not just a means of asking. It is a channel for transformation. It is in the place of prayer that your spirit begins to grow, that your understanding begins to align with the purposes of God. You will never truly grow until you come to the place where you can say, Lord, not my will but yours be done. That place of surrender is the beginning of ascension. The challenge is that many people want speed but not structure. They want promotion but not processing. Yet the patterns of the Spirit cannot be violated. When a man begins to pray, something begins to shift in the Spirit in prayer. Prayer brings your life under the government of heaven. It causes the flesh to lose its grip and the voice of God to become clear. That's when real growth begins. Not just external expansion but internal enlargement. You begin to grow in discernment, in stature, in capacity. There is a version of you that heaven is waiting for. And it is only prayer that can birth that version. Not emotional prayer, not religious recital, but travail. The kind of prayer that breaks you, that bends your will, that causes you to weep before the Lord because you see how much needs to change in you. The kind of prayer that transforms you into another man. That is the growth God is looking for. It is spiritual first before it ever becomes physical. When your inner man is built, your outer life will follow. So don't seek growth by jumping processes. Seek growth by remaining on the altar. Stay there until the fire falls. Stay there until the weight of glory rests upon you. Stay there until your voice becomes an echo of heaven. That is growth. That is divine increase. That is how men rise. Prayer is not just a spiritual exercise. It is a system in the Spirit, an ordained pathway through which men are transitioned from one season to another. There are realms and dimensions in life you will never step into until you birth them in the place of prayer. Prayer is not always about asking. It is often about becoming. The place of prayer is the place where men are made, where mantles are activated, where doors are opened in the spirit long before they open in the physical. You cannot grow in power, in wisdom, in influence, or in stature without a vibrant and consistent prayer life. No matter how prophetic your destiny is, if you do not take the responsibility of priesthood, you will remain grounded. God does not commit growth to the casual. He commits growth to the faithful, to those who can groan until the womb of the Spirit open. There is a cry in the Spirit that causes the heavens to shift. It is not a shout, it is a travail. There is a groaning that cannot be uttered by mere words. It is the sound of transition, the sound of men who are tired of the ordinary, men who refuse to remain in yesterday's glory. Every major transition in your life must be midwifed by prayer. It is prayer that breaks the shell of limitation and ushers you into the next phase of your life. No man grows into influence by chance. No ministry rises by luck. No business breaks forth just by strategy. There must be an altar behind that result. There must be incense rising from somewhere. The challenge is that many want to shine in public but have not been broken in private. The place of prayer is the place where flesh dies and the spirit is. There are realms of accuracy, authority, and discernment that only prayer can unlock. No book, no mentor, no gift can replace what only travail can birth. When you pray, you are aligning your spirit with eternal truth. You are creating spiritual infrastructure that sustains real and lasting growth. You are building yourself into a vessel that can host the dimensions of grace and wisdom required for the next level. When a man begins to pray deeply, consistently, sincerely, something starts shifting in the unseen. The spirit realm begins to acknowledge your voice. You become a gatekeeper, a legislator, a man of stature. Growth is not about activities. It is about spiritual rank, and rank is not conferred by titles. It is conferred by depth. The man of prayer is the man that grows. He may not have connections. He may not have followers, but he has the altar, and the altar is where stories are rewritten, where seasons are changed. The altar is where seeds of greatness are watered until they become trees of destiny. When you stay in the place of prayer long enough, you will grow without begging for it. You will expand without manipulating it. That is the power of prayer. It sponsors your transition. In this kingdom, growth is not just a product of energy or effort. It is a product of life. You don't grow simply because you desire to grow. You grow because something has entered you that was not there before. That thing is called revelation. The spirit of revelation is not just for deep people. It is for men who have realized that destiny is too great to be governed by guess. You cannot rise to command in any area spiritually, mentally, financially, or in leadership without the operation of light. It is light that lifts. It is light that accelerates. It is light that structures your steps in destiny. When God wants to lift a man, He doesn't first give him a car, a house, or a throne. He sends light. He opens the eyes of the spirit to see what others cannot see. Many people are stagnated today, not because they are lazy, but because they are walking in darkness. They are praying, fasting, serving, but nothing is shifting because light has not yet come. You see, the realm of the spirit is governed by precision, and until you can access the mind of God concerning a season, you will keep recycling old efforts with no fruit. It is revelation that interprets the seasons. Revelation is not information. It is the unveiling of divine patterns. When you access light, confusion ends. You no longer guess your way into favor, you discern it. You no longer strive for doors to open, you command. And how does this light come? It comes through prayer and fellowship with the Holy Spirit. When a man begins to truly pray, not mechanically, not religiously, but with hunger and brokenness, something begins to happen to his spirit. Veils begin to fall. What was once hidden becomes visible. Suddenly scriptures come alive. Instructions become clear. A man who was confused yesterday suddenly knows what to do today. That is the operation of light. When light enters a man, he stops shadow boxing.
He becomes accurate. He begins to maximize time. He begins to make destiny-defining decisions. That's how growth happens, not by doing everything but by doing the right thing at the right time in the right place with the right people. Many believers have not grown because they have not contended for light. They are doing ministry in darkness, doing business in darkness, entering relationships in darkness, making choices based on trends and opinions. But there is a way that seems right to a man, and the end is destruction. It takes the spirit of revelation to see beyond the surface, to interpret the handwriting on the wall, to know when to move and when to wait, when to speak and when to be silent. That is growth. When your decisions begin to reflect the mind of God, when your steps begin to tiptoe divine direction, you have entered the realm of accurate living. And accurate living is the womb of sustainable growth. You rise not by chance but by light.
There are seasons in a man's life in when encounter can compress decades of labor into a moment of transformation. Growth in the kingdom is not always gradual. There are dimensions of growth that come by encounters. An encounter is not a vision. It is not a dream. It is not even a feeling. An encounter is a collision between your humanity and God's divinity. It is when the supernatural intercepts your natural and rewrites your story. Every man God has ever used, every destiny that has shifted from obscurity to influence, can trace a defining moment to a divine encounter. One night in the presence of God, one encounter in the place of prayer, one touch from the Spirit and your life takes a trajectory it can never return from. It is possible to pray for hours and remain the same if your prayer does not lead to encounter. What gives prayer its power is that it becomes the gateway for spiritual experiences. There are realms in the Spirit you cannot enter by willpower or intellect. You must be summoned into them by the weight of an encounter. And encounters are not mechanical. They are spiritual. They happen when your heart is positioned, when your hunger becomes unbearable, when your desperation pulls God into your atmosphere. That moment when time seems to stop, when words fail you, when all that remains is your tears and your worship. That is when transformation begins. Encounters come with instructions. Encounters come with impartations. There are graces that cannot be taught, only caught. There are dimensions of wisdom that no book can give you. Only an encounter can engrave upon your spirit. That is why people rise after encounter and begin to do in 1 year what they could not achieve in 10, because God puts something upon you that no man can give you and no system can replicate. You can listen to one sermon for 10 years and remain stagnant, but one encounter with the living word behind the message and everything changes. That is growth. Some of you are praying for open doors, but what you really need is an encounter, because in one moment, God can give you a key that opens not just a door but generations of access. In one encounter, God can speak a word that cancels delay, removes fear, imparts courage, and releases fire upon your altar. Growth is not always in steps. It is often in leap. You don't always climb. Sometimes you are carried. And what carries you is the weight of an encounter. This is why men of stature in the Spirit prioritize encounters. They create space. They retreat. They wait, because they know one divine appearance can do what 10 years of human effort can. You must cry for encounters, not emotional experiences, but genuine encounters that leave marks on your life, marks of fire, marks of transformation, marks that announce to creation that another version of you has emerged. That is how men grow, by encounter. Growth in the Spirit is not a passive journey. It is a battle, and every battle is territorial. To grow is to ascend. To grow is to lay hold of a new height, a deeper realm, a greater measure. But you must understand that the moment you begin to desire growth, you attract resistance, because in the realm of the Spirit, there are forces that police boundaries.
There are altars that have vowed no one in your bloodline will cross certain thresholds. So the moment a man begins to press for growth, he enters warfare. Growth is not permitted until dominion is enforced. It is not just about becoming better. It is about taking over space that was once occupied by darkness. That is why spiritual growth must come with warfare prayers. Because growth provokes jealousy in the spirit realm. Growth means you are becoming a threat. Growth means you are approaching gates that others were not allowed to pass. The man who grows must understand altars. An altar is not just a physical location. It is a spiritual system of authorization. There are altars that were raised to resist progress. And until a higher altar speaks, you will pray and nothing will shift. You will fast and nothing will move. But when a man begins to pray with understanding, his voice begins to echo on higher altars. He begins to summon the attention of realms beyond time. And from that point, growth becomes possible, not because resistance stops, but because your voice has gained authority. Every level you desire is already occupied. There are thrones, there are mantles, there are dimensions that have custodians, demonic gatekeepers who will not hand over influence just because you wish for it. You must war in prayer. You must war with revelation. You must war with prophecy. The sword of the Spirit must be in your mouth. The shield of faith must be active. Because the minute you say, Lord, lift me, there's a reaction. The territory begins to shake. The old system that benefited from your ignorance begins to resist your advancement. Growth is not only about the promises of God. It is about contending for the promises. The children of Israel were given Canaan by prophecy, but they still had to fight giants, tear down walls, and confront resistance. So when God says you will grow, He does not mean it will be easy. He means the grace is available, but the warfare must be engaged. That is why men of growth are also men of warfare. They don't just study and pray, they war. They lift up prayers in the night. They speak in tongues until atmospheres shift. They intercede until the weight of demonic resistance begins to break. And then like a flood, growth comes, not because it was given cheaply but because dominion was enforced. Until you fight, you will not grow. Until you war, you will not rise. Growth is a battle, and only warriors rise. Everything God desires to do in and through your life will require growth, not just external enlargement, but deep spiritual stature. Growth is not a suggestion. It is a necessity, and it does not happen by chance. It happens by light, by encounters, by consistency, by revelation, and by prevailing prayer. You grow when you understand that prayer is the midwife of transition. You grow when you contend with the altars that resist your right. You grow when you stop chasing visibility and start building capacity. There's a version of you that the nations are waiting for, but that version will only emerge on the altar. Don't stop, don't give up, don't set. Every time you pray, every time you stay, every time you press, something is forming in you. Keep growing. The process may be slow, but the reward will be undeniable. May grace be multiplied to you as you rise from one level of glory to another. May your altar never lose fire. May your hunger never die. And may your life be a testament that growth with God is real, is possible, and is powerful. Thank you for pressing into the word. Thank you for valuing your destiny enough to grow. Stay strong, stay burning, and stay yielded. You are on a journey of greatness. Good luck, and may heaven honor your sacrifice.